Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for being. I'm just going to walk around this podium because I don't do podiums. That's kind of, it's way more official than I am. Thank you all very much for coming out. As you all know, just to make sure you're in the right place, and if you're not, you're going to stay because this is a great event. Today we are hosting a collaboration of us have gotten together to host a town hall on education to bring absolute education and awareness to our communities about what's going on in HISD. We've been very fortunate that we've got an amazing speaker today that is uplifting, strong, a real warrior, a true warrior in the fight for educational equity. My name is Candace. And I am very fortunate to be able to work alongside some amazing people in education. And thank you for being here. We want to welcome you. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of how the program will run. We have several of our my fellow activists that are going to talk about the timeline of education here in HISD. They're going to speak to some of the issues that we have faced, clear up some things that sound really good when politicians say them, but when you dig down and you learn the truth behind their words, you find out that it's not good for our communities at all. We hope to bring awareness and really open eyes and explain some of the things that are really hard to understand. We get it, that when you start reading laws and policies and things like that, it gets really confusing, and what you think might be a bad thing, you're not really sure, so you don't speak out about it. Well, today we're going to tell you what the good, the bad, and the ugly is. We will have an opportunity at the end of the programming for a question and answer, and we want to just say right off the bat, there is no question you could possibly ask that is too basic, too complex, doesn't make sense to you. Well, let it come out of your mouth, because that's what we're here for. We want to do everything we can to arm our community to fight a fight that brings educational equity to every single child in HISD. Again, I thank you very much, all of you, for being here. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to one of my fellow fighters, Sarah Becker, and she is going to break down the timeline of events here for HISD. Thank you all very much for coming.
How are y'all doing? Thank you for being here today. So I'm just going to give hopefully a real quick overview of some of the state laws and how we got to the situation that we're in and what the deadlines and timelines that we're looking at. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the state laws that are on the books right now. So some of you may have heard some of these things about these state laws. But in 2015, the Texas legislature passed a bill known as House Bill 1842. And we refer to it as the death penalty or the hostile takeover law. But the bulk of it was actually around A through F ratings. So giving schools a letter grade. That was what the biggest part of the law, that's what got the most attention. But Representative Dutton, who represents this area, who's in the picture on the left there, he also added an amendment to the bill that it's the state takeover provision. So it says that if a school is labeled failing, if it hits 5 years, 5 consecutive years, then the state shall either close the school or take over the elected school board, get rid of the school board, and appoint a board of managers. So that is the death penalty or the hostile takeover. You can see that piece was slipped into this bill. And that went into effect last year. So that's why you've heard a lot of people starting to talk about this and what's going on with HISD. Last year, HISD had 10 schools that were at 4 years and were at risk for hitting year 5. So we'll talk more about last year in a second. But that's the bill. And then the second bill, I call the first bill the death penalty or the hostile takeover. The second bill is the escape hatch. They passed this law 2 years later in 2017. And it seems kind of innocuous. It's a bill that lets school districts form partnerships which partnerships, don't be confused, partnerships are charter schools. They have to apply to be a charter school. They may use the word partnership, but it's a charter school. It's an outside entity running a neighborhood public school. So they incentivize districts to do this. And part of the incentive was if the school board would turn over the school, then they would get 2 years off the accountability system. 2 years of not having to worry about the test scores, and 2 years not worrying about whether or not the kids were passing the test. So they get 2 years off the accountability system, and they get an extra $1,800 per student. So you can see these two laws are working together. We will take over your school board, but if you don't like that, then you can turn over the neighborhood schools to a charter school and not have to worry about it, and we'll give you extra money to do so. So that's why HISD last year, I think that's where we are. Yes, if you remember last year, these are some pictures from the board meeting in April. Last year, the deadline for our school board to make a decision about the charters was in April, and so they had the April 24th board meeting. You can see the proposal last year was to hand over 10 of our schools to Energize for Excellence, which was an in-district charter with HISD. They were already running schools, but it was to hand over 10 of those schools. The owner of the operator of those charter schools owns the land that her school, a lot of the land that those schools sit on. So she was making some personal money off of the rent of those buildings. And as you can see, the community showed up, we spoke out, and the board ultimately did not vote. So there was no vote, they didn't take any action, which there was a lot of hand-wringing about that. Are we going to get taken over this year? There was a lot of concern about that. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So what ultimately happened was the 10 schools, we escaped. 6 of the schools passed the test miraculously and got off the failure list, and the other 4 got a waiver from Hurricane Harvey, which leads us to this year. We're now at 4 schools. We're looking at 4 schools this year instead of 10. It's those same 4 schools. The 4 schools are Kashmir, Wheatley, Highland Heights, and Henry Middle School. And this year, the mayor has, we found out in December through some public records, that they had created an entity to be the partner for these 4 schools. So he wanted to model it after Los Angeles, where they've done a similar thing with, I think, around 30 schools. That's what he was saying. He'd modeled it after. The important thing to know about Mayor Turner is that you remember he was a member of the legislature for 30 years before he became mayor. One of the last votes he made when he was in office was in favor of 1842, that death penalty hostile takeover law. So he voted in favor, and then he also, his point person on education for the city is Juliette Steped. She's a former HISD board member. She voted to close the last round of school closures that we had, Dodson, and taking away all the programs from Jones. She was the president of the board when that vote went down and was a decisive vote for those things. So this is the track record, on education of the mayor and his staff. But he put together a nonprofit board full of the 3 names that were on the paperwork. One was a climate change denier, and one was the wife of Rod Page, who's architect of No Child Left Behind, former HISD superintendent. So not people that we want in charge of our schools. And then you may have seen on social media or wherever else, we showed up at the city council meeting, and then we also, in December, the school board was discussing whether or not to have open up a request for proposals process to start on this whole road of do we turn over these schools, do we charter them? And we showed up and we spoke out. You can see us with our backs to the board there, and they voted 5-4. It was a split vote of 5-4 to not open the RFP process. So right now there are no plans to charter the schools that are public, but the deadline for the school board to make a decision is February 4th. So that's why we're looking at. That's why we're here today. We're trying to continue the same fight that was started last year. And the thing is, we're going to have to continue this fight every year until the state changes the law. There will always be schools on that list. So one of the things also that I just wanted to speak to really quickly was this is an analysis that we did on 2016-2017 data. You can see, okay, improvement required is the term that the state says when you're failing. So Texas schools that are rated improvement required for 4 years are highly correlated with race and class, black and brown students, and poverty. So you can see down here, this is the number of black or brown, African American or Hispanic student enrollment, which the state reports on every year, public information, and then the number of economically disadvantaged students. So you can see, if you're over here, if you have a high black and brown population and a high poverty rates, you're at much higher risk of state takeover. These are the schools that are being targeted. It's not happening in white neighborhoods. It's happening where there's black and brown students and there's lots of poverty. Both of those things, you can see it's not being, the color is the schools that are under threat of state takeover. So that's I think that's all. That's my presentation. Just to tell you kind of the layout of the law and how we got here to where we are, and why February 4th is so important for us in Houston.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much. So the timeline, the information, it gets a little bit tricky. And do please keep in mind, if you have questions, pull out a piece of paper, write it down, because we want to answer your questions, especially when we talk about the timeline of events and how we got here. Sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. And if you have any questions at all, please let us clear them up. As Travis, this is a fighter right here, y'all. I love to hear this man speak. Please give him a hand. As Travis comes up, we want to keep in mind we've got a person stationed in the back. Joseph is waving his hand. Joseph is specifically here to help you find out who your representatives are. Why is it important to know who your representative is? Because you need to know who to hold accountable for what they're doing to our schools. So if you don't know who your school board trustee is, there's no shame in it. We'll give you that information. You don't know who your state reps is, your state senator, we can give you all of that information before you leave today. At any point, it's okay for you to walk back there and get that information from Joe, and because we want to arm you guys with every single tool you need. So, Travis, come shine for us, black man.
First, I want to thank everybody for coming out, because it will take everybody to defeat both HISD as well as the state of Texas. I'm that parent that my kids have been relocated 3 times in the same corrupt school district, all successful schools. In 2011, they had 2010, they had 66 schools slated for closure, all black and brown schools. 2011, that number dropped down to 37 schools, all black schools. So the bullseye's on our back. From those 37 schools, they dropped it down to 4 schools. The deficit then was like $1.7 million, but they closed those 4 schools for less than $2 million. Once they closed them schools, for example, B.H. Grimes and James Rose both turned into charter schools. Energize for Excellence is housed in Grimes building right now. Both of those schools were successful schools. It's not that the kids of HISD is failing HISD. HISD is failing the kids.
Yes, sir.
The state of Texas is failing all of us. There's no reason we even need the state of Texas in the Houston Independent School District, because over 90% of our taxes take care of HISD.
Speak on.
Less than 10% come from the state.
Speak on.
That don't make any sense. And then we send our tax money to the state, and then they issue that back down to us. But at the same time, if you can't take care of our schools, you shouldn't be opening any more charter schools.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, if your watchdog ain't barking up in Austin, it's time for a new watchdog.
There you go.
It's time for a new watchdog. These laws have been put in place by people that look like us. Charter schools equal money. Bonds equal money. Think about all these bonds that passed. In 1998, the bond was $678 million. 2002, $807 million. 2007, $805 million. 2012, $1.9 billion. So what was their intentions then? Was you going to build these brand new buildings to hand them over to charter schools? I think so. Yeah. Because there's a lot of Walmarts that used to be Kmarts. Just because it's a big pretty building has never educated anyone.
Thank you.
Anyone. Now, if you look at what's been transpiring on HISD board, in case y'all don't know, the superintendent works for the board. And everybody else works for the superintendent. So whatever's been happening, even when Master Grill was still running his plantation, the board allowed him to do that. They allowed him to do that. They closed all these schools. Also in 2011, they fired over 700 teachers. Dotson, for instance, Dotson was the only African-American Montessori school in the state of Texas. Let them tell you it was unenrolled, but they had over 400 kids on the waiting list every year. They said the kids wasn't learning, but it was a child by the name of Leon McGee that won the UIL competition district-wide. That's even all the schools that have everything. That was my daughter. Juliet Steffi, the lady that the mayor's putting on this board right now, she stood behind in front of like 400 parents in the scenery just like this and said she would never close any schools. Her decided vote was to close their school.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's time for us to wake up.
Yes, sir.
It's time for us to wake up. If you think we don't matter, if we hadn't been at those board meetings, your schools would have been chartered already.
That's right.
Your schools would have been chartered already. So stop allowing your politicians to be comfortable when you uncomfortable. Now, if one walk here right now, nobody in this room should get up and want to take a picture with them, shake their hands, or anything else. Either your streets are flooded, or you having a gun put in your face every other day, or they talking about closing your schools. But they comfortable though. They have taken all of the vocational programs out of our schools. The kids don't have options. What they're choosing now is crime over this test that doesn't prove anything. How can you take a test and they decide what your passing mark should be after you take the test? When y'all leave here today, I want y'all to tell your elected officials they should take the test. Yes. And if they don't pass that test, they have to vacate their office and never run for another office in their life.
Yes,
and give that 30-year pension to one of these so-called failing schools. Think about it. In the last 20, 30 years, Greg Abbott and anyone else in office hasn't said a mumbling word about education here in Texas.
That's right.
But since the parents are starting to push back, everybody got something to say. See, they want that weak board to fold. If that board had said, charter these schools, the schools would have been chartered. This is all about money. It's all about compensation. It has absolutely nothing to do with education. It's all about real estate, y'all. It's all about real estate. Why do you think all these formal elected employees, y'all need to learn to say that, elected employees, because they do work for you.
Yes.
And insubordinate employees should be fired.
Yes, sir.
Should be fired. Not no write-up, they should be fired. I don't care if it's the mayor, I don't care if it's Greg Abbott or whoever else. Let's get rid of it. Before I go too far, we have a very diverse crowd in here.
Yes, sir.
Where the white people at? I'm saying that because they fighting just as hard as we are for these schools. It's going to take a united front. The diversity is what's going to get this thing did. But it's going to take all of us. Now, if we allow them to do what they want to do, then they're going to do what they want to do.
Yes.
Now, I'd rather my mayor be focused on the drainage, the crime, not suing us. He wasn't suing the firefighters, he was suing you.
Exactly.
With your tax dollars.
Yep.
I don't want the governor speaking about education, period, when he's a part of what's going on here. District 2, We in District 2, right?
Yes.
They have the most school closures in HISD. So why would your state rep write a foolish bill like that? District 2, then 9, then 4. All black.
Harold Dutton.
All black. Not only that, they're trying to write something now that says if the schools are underutilized, they either have to share them with the charter schools, sell them to the charter schools, or lease them to the charter schools.
Show me the money.
But who in here have ever built a brand new house and gave it to somebody
Come on now.
just because they like them that much? Another bond is coming up also, y'all. Another bond is going to be the biggest one yet. Why vote for it? When you see bond, you go in the booth, you vote automatic. I don't care what it is. Stadium, schools, whatever else. Vote against it. Everything that's happening right now is coming back to bite us. We're not being represented on any level. We're not being represented on any level. We wrote an article in the Chronicle. Some of y'all probably read it. And it's only one person I know, every time he get upset, he tweet. That's Donald Trump. But Greg Abbott did it. Birds of a feather flock together. So if we don't wake up and take our schools back, take our communities back, whatever happened is on us. Everything is not your fault. Everything is not our fault. Those who just sitting back and watching and not doing anything, it is your fault. We need those school boards to be packed. We need City Hall to be packed. Whoever you have ever voted for, hold them accountable. Stop allowing them to come to your community meetings and take over and tell you what you're doing wrong. Everything is not your fault. We didn't remove the programs from the schools. We didn't close the schools. We can't fire the superintendents. So we didn't put ourselves in these situations. The only thing that the STAR test has proven, they don't mind wasting money on standardized testing. To this date, they have spent well over $500 million on a test that proves absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. If y'all didn't know, this was only one kid in the whole Houston Independent School District scored a perfect score on that test. That kid went to Ebony Worden High School.
Thank you.
But when Ralph came to Houston, Texas, he passed up Ebony Worden High School and went to Pearland. Pearland don't have any schools now, or something wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
These same board members, and I'm not letting them off the hook either.
Thank you.
But we don't want the state to come here and have dictatorship over nothing that they cause. Even that bad legislation that Harold Dutton put out. The governor have the power to veto that. He did not. The governor have the power to revamp education and the funding. He did not. So, at the end of the day, it's time to have a zero tolerance attitude about this. I don't know how y'all feel about y'all kids, but I'll do anything for mine.
Thank you.
I'll do anything for mine. But this coming from a parent that had to relocate their kids 3 times in the same corrupt school district. Don't let anyone tell you that partnerships and charter schools are different. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. All the programs that we once had for free in our schools, they have taken them out, and now the kids have to pay for them. But 60 to 80% of HISD kids are either economic disadvantaged or at risk. Those are the kids they should be catering to. Title I money for schools like Bel Air and Lamar and stuff like that, that's just extra funding.
Exactly. Overfunded.
It's just extra funding. So how can Bel Air possibly be Title I and we did not be Title I? I'm just using that as an example. It's pretty much the first year where they pretty much said the whole district is going to be Title I. But think about it. If 60 to 80% of the district is economically disadvantaged or at risk, that means pretty much the whole district is already Title I. Extra funding. That's all it is. So what I'm asking y'all to do is to not be on Facebook pushing the like button. Get in this fight. Get in this fight. Be on the front line. Be on, even if you choose not to speak. We need your body there.
Yes.
April the 24th, it was no reason for anyone to be drugged out of a tax-funded building for speaking up. What we're also asking the board to do with our tax dollars is to sue the TEA. HISD is the largest school district in the state of Texas. If they file a suit, the smaller district is going to fall in line behind that suit. Think about it. How can all the schools always be black and brown that they're talking about closing? How is it that, in case y'all don't know, it's a lawsuit already open down there, but the school district will not pick it up regarding the STAR test. Each and every year they have administrative tests, there's been a glitch in it, right? The time restrictions, it was in violation of the law. So the test prior to that will be null and void if they file the lawsuit. If they want to give us a year for Harvey, what about Ike?
Thank you.
Yes.
What about Alicia? It goes that far back, how long we've been neglected. So 1 year is no good. I even spoke to some of these state reps. You know what they say? You say, we didn't have time to read it.
Right.
In other words, they do favors. If you vote for my bill, I'm going to vote for your bill. We can care less about those kids. We can care less about those kids. So, at the end of the day, all I'm asking you all to do is to stand with us and make your elected officials accountable to you. Yes. To you. The board has to pick a side right now. No in and buts about it. The governor has said they was a joke. But I think the governor's a joke too.
Yes.
I think those seat fillers, not the state reps, the seat fillers in those seats, I think they're jokes too.
Yes.
Don't come to my neighborhood hollering out from the 4-4 when you don't understand what we're going through. Don't come to my neighborhood hollering about you from Sunnyside when you don't understand what we're going through. 5th Ward, 3rd Ward. We all going through the same things. One reason crime is so high is because they have taken everything out of these schools. Everything don't start at home. I know we heard that forever. Everything do not start at home. The things that your parents instill in you, whether good or bad, starts at home. Most of the bad stuff you learn from your environment. For everybody in this room here, think about it. Every time a storm hit, that's big business. Charter schools are big business. School bonds are big business. Flooding is big business. Imagine if our kids had some trades to get some of that money. Versus all of it going to state reps, mayors, governors, non-profits. If you look at some of the paperwork on HISD paperwork, you're going to see more lawyers and consultants than anything. Before every wording is going on almost 12 years construction, y'all. 12 years. They've been talking about this charter school thing for a long time now. Right? So if bond after bond after bond, what was their intentions in 1998? What was their intentions in 2002? What was their intentions in 2007? What was their intentions in 2012? All those schools that was on the list originally was not even 5 years. They hadn't even met that standard. It was Madison was taken off, Cullen was taken off, But if we wasn't paying attention, they was gonna leave them on there. Meaning, Madden is was one of the best schools in HISD, period. Went above and beyond standards 16 consecutive years. They took the principal away because she did not want to change her curriculum. Why change something that was working? Ever since then, it's been downhill. So, regardless of what they're telling y'all, it's us against them.
Yes, sir.
It's us against them. That's the only way it's gonna work. Love your kids and your child's future more than you love any of your politicians. They temporary. They temporary. But I'm finna get ready to go and sit down. But think about it. If you're on a job, if you're not doing your job, you're insubordinate or whatever, you get fired. No second chances. I agree that this school board is a very big disappointment and embarrassment, but I do not think the state of Texas is going to do any better. The only people who haven't had a chance to mess up something is us.
Thank you.
Everybody else had their chances. Thank you.
Mid-South Education Association, a grassroots advocacy group comprised of administrators, parents, teachers, young people, and local school council members to meet the students' needs in that area. They were the first group to certify parents as LSC facilitators, which has become a model being replicated across the city of Chicago. In addition, they successfully organized to stop several school closings in the area and secure resources for neglected neighborhood schools. KOCO has served as a resource for organizations nationwide, including this one, dealing with school closings and the elimination of community voice from the decision-making process. I want you to welcome, with a round of applause, Mr. Jitu Brown.
Speak.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How's everybody doing? What's up?
What's up?
So, the first thing I like to do is just say all praise is due to Save Our Schools, Houston. This coalition is, please give them a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause. You know, the stereotype is that black and brown parents don't care,
Yeah.
that we're just gonna let people do whatever they're gonna do, and that you can't build multiracial coalitions. But I look at this room and I'm inspired about the possibilities. I'm not coming in here to try to be a know-it-all, to be the person that's gonna, have all the answers. I'm just a cat from the south side of Chicago who was trained by men and women from the Black Power movement and realized that that was my life. I didn't look at community organizing as a bridge to ascend to something else. I'm an organizer, that's my purpose, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I just want to express my thanks to you all for even believing that I have something to offer to this space. I humbly say thank you, and I'm gonna do my level best to not be long, but to be strong, if that's
Right on.
okay. All right? So, I'm y'all cousin from the south side of Chicago. Houston and Chicago are like sister cities. Y'all are probably gonna pass us up soon in regards to population. Chicago's number 3 in the country, Houston is number 4. Black people are being pushed out of Chicago at a rate that's similar to us evacuating the South in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. We didn't migrate from Mississippi.
Thank you.
We evacuated. We didn't migrate from Arkansas. We evacuated. So I want to let you know before I go even deeper in this, my presentation is going to be centered around racial justice.
Yes.
Why? Because what's happening in Houston It's also happening in Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, Oakland, Jackson, Mississippi, New Orleans, Kansas City, Missouri, Cleveland, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota. There is an assault on our right to exist.
Yes.
School closings has never been about school improvement. So I'm coming to you from the birthplace of school privatization in the United States, and that's Chicago. The birthplace in the world was Chile. And I invite you all to do some research on how Pinochet partnered with Milton Friedman and the University of Chicago to privatize a nation. And today, Chile is a voucher nation. Everybody that goes to school in Chile must have a voucher. The poorest students get a voucher for the most under-resourced school. The middle-class students get a voucher for the charter schools. And the wealthy students get a voucher for the private schools. But the birthplace of privatization in this country is Chicago, Illinois. They've been closing schools in my neighborhood. I came up in the Bronzeville community. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with Chicago, but Bronzeville is about 10 minutes from downtown Chicago, right off the lakefront. Folks in that community, that came from that community, like Mahalia Jackson, Gwendolyn Brooks, Lou Rawls. Y'all heard Lou Rawls, right?
Yeah.
You'll never find, right?
Yeah.
Lou Rawls, Sam Cooke, Richard Wright. I mean, this is a historic black community. But they didn't care about the history. That history is important to us. The powers that be in Chicago were dead set on eliminating that history. And so what I want to do, I'm going to walk through this presentation, because what I'm going to give you is not rhetoric. I'm going to give you history, and I'm going to give you facts. And I'm also going to tell you this, as my brother Travis said, in essence, people do what we let them do. People do what we let them do. And the work that's been done on us as black people, the assault on our existence, the violence that we faced when we've tried to organize. I want all my sisters and brothers in this room to understand this. That community organizing was once a staple in black communities.
Yes.
They murdered community organizing out of black communities.
Yes.
The response to us developing our own cities and our own neighborhoods has always been violence. So the theme of I want you to understand, to any black students in here, any black parents in here, you're not the problem.
Thank you.
The problem is an unreconciled hatred for people that look like us. And no, I need y'all to hear me. I need you to hear me. That the problem, and I'm asking every white ally in this room, if you get impatient, check yourself.
Yes.
Okay? If you get impatient with what I'm saying, that's the problem. See, because as I sit here, as a 52-year-old man, I've got experiences of police officers putting a gun to my head as an 11-year-old. I have experiences of watching my friends shot dead in the street. I have experiences of school systems shutting down successful schools and dumping black children into other schools like they don't matter. Like they don't matter. And the children coming up to me, pulling on my pants leg. Brother Jitu, are they going to reopen my school? Second graders. We don't have failing schools. Right. We have been failed.
Yes.
Who in this country has forgiven more evil than us?
Thank you.
Who in this country has just wanted to be a part, just want to say we human beings too? And the response has always been violent. School closings is violent.
Violence.
The murder rate in Chicago shot up after 2013. There was no Chirac before 2013. You're looking at a man that has had to officiate funerals. Kevin Ambrose, boy, outraged, was murdered on 47th Street because he was picking his friend up and some kid shot him dead. The murder rate in Chicago escalated after the 50 schools were closed in one fell swoop in 2013. But I'm gonna tell you this. We went head up against arguably the most powerful Democrat fundraiser in the United States. People were terrified around the man. That's why he was Barack Obama's chief of staff.
Speak on it.
And when we mobilized our people, we sent 750 people at that mark at a budget hearing and chased his ass off the stage. Excuse my language. Excuse my language. And we beat him. And he's not running for a third term because of the police violence movement and the education justice movement. We ran that mark out of office. So what I'm saying to you, sisters and brothers, is as we go through this piece, if you got inside you some belief that we can't win, if you have inside you some type of skepticism about what I'm talking about, I ask you to check my history. Because I'm far from perfect. But what I know is I've been in these streets 27, 28 years consistently. And my record speaks for itself. So what I've learned in that process is that when we create our own spaces like this, and the people directly impacted have the opportunity to actually envision what they want, we can win. We can win. All right, so that was all off script. I was just moved, so so if I understand things correctly, as my brother said, I'm the national director of a group called the Journey for Justice Alliance. We are a national network of grassroots community-based organizations in 39 cities across the country. Where we enter is we use community organizing as a tool to win equity in public education. We understand, we believe in the artistic science called community organizing. Community organizing and activism are very different. Activism and community organizing are not the same thing.
Yes.
As an activist, we lift our voice to an issue. And organizing works with the people directly impacted to lift their voices. Y'all follow me?
Yeah.
And so, when I look at this room, I don't know what y'all call yourselves, but y'all organize. It's Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Saturday. All right. So it's Saturday, and it's a room full of people. You could be, and it's warm enough, y'all could be barbecuing, you could be doing anything. But the people who organize this have enough credibility that you knew that this was a place you needed to be. So listen to me, sisters and brothers. I've never been in a space with this type of turnout. If the people decided they were going to win, I've never been in a space where they lost. Never. The issue becomes, do you judge winning and losing by a board decision? Because I'm going to tell you a story today. The board voted to close the school I love 4 years before we won it back. 4 years. They sat there, my son was like 2 years old. I know I scared that boy. He like this big. And when they voted to close our high school, all I did, I was just boo, boo. He was looking at me like, oh my God. But 5 years after that, you'll learn about the history of Dyett High School. Dyett High School was reopened with $16 million in new investments. And the CEO of Chicago Public Schools had to stand behind me at the press conference.
Yes.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. Yes. All right, so, but J for J is a network of powerful community-based organizations, people who understand the artistic science of community organizing, and we understand that our work is to build, is to finally win equity in public education. So I know that from the way sisters and brothers educated me last night, that the 4 schools that you all have at risk are Phyllis Wheatley, Cashmere, Henry Middle School, and Highland Heights, right?
Yes.
Is that accurate? So I want to talk to you a little bit, I'm going to talk to the room a little bit about the school choice movement. Repeat after me. School choice.
School choice.
Oh, y'all give me. School choice.
School choice
Is a scam.
is a scam.
It's a hustle.
It's a hustle.
It's 3-card Monty.
It's 3-card Monty.
It's pick a card, any card.
It's pick a card, any card.
Now let's talk about it. How many of you all have this handout with you? This was not developed by Jitu Brown on my laptop. This was developed by Stanford University, Open Societies Institute, and the Schott Foundation for School Reform in partnership with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights with the United Nations. Here's what we know. Across the world, societies that take a philosophy of public investment dramatically outperform societies that use a market-based strategy. What they're doing in Houston, what they're doing in Chicago, what they're doing in Oakland, Detroit, and New Orleans is the market-based approach. So what our sisters and brothers did is they compared 3 countries. They wanted to do apples to apples. So they compared the United States to Canada, they compared Finland to Sweden, and they compared Cuba to Chile. And in every case, the society that focused on public investment, Canada, dominates the United States in public education.
Yes.
Cuba dominates Chile in education. And Finland dominates Sweden. What we get in public investment is an increasing academic achievement, greater integration of students, more equity, increasing attainment across student groups. That means whatever the student's classification is, you see growth in all of those different classifications. And teachers with high level of knowledge and skills. What we get in societies that privatize is a declining achievement overall. I'm gonna give you a quick example of New Orleans. Any original New Orleans folks in the room? Okay. Well, we know after Hurricane Katrina, they tried to privatize all the schools in New Orleans, right? 7 years after Hurricane Katrina, 79% of the schools, despite the fact that these are new shiny charter schools, were DNF schools in the state of Louisiana. So what the Bessie School Board had to do is they had to figure out, this ain't working. So we have to do something so that people think it looks better. So they lowered the standards. They cooked the books to make the schools look better, right? I asked y'all to look for an article in the New Orleans Tribune called Faking the Grade. It's the most powerful critique of school privatization I've ever seen. Faking the grade. Just look it up and read it and you'll see what I'm talking about. In Chicago, since 2002, only 18% of the schools that have replaced closed schools perform well. And out of that 18%, 50% of those are selective enrollment schools. So they know, the privatizers know, and we know that privatization does not improve student achievement. But what does privatization do then, you say? Repeat these cities after me. Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Philadelphia. Chicago. Detroit. Cleveland. New Orleans. Oakland. Los Angeles. I'm going to stop right there. Now, all of those schools, privatization has been entrenched. And the loss of affordable housing has taken root. And in all of those cities, the black population is plummeting. Are y'all hearing me? In all of those cities, Washington, D.C. is no longer Chocolate City, family. Y'all, how many of y'all have been to D.C. back in the day? You know when they was playing that go-go, you loved D.C. Now, the population that was once 72% African-American is about 46% African-American. In the year 2000 in Chicago, we were 53% of the population. 18 years later, we're 32%. New Orleans, America's most African city, where our ancestors in Congo Square defied curfews and spoke in their native, in our African languages, and drummed, and dared the slave catchers to say something, is at 44% African American population today. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
So what I'm asking you all to do, you can check what I'm saying, all right, because I will not come up here and just flip it, but you can check it. What I'm saying to you is that school privatization is about the removal of black people from urban spaces and the dilution of our Is that a word?
It is today.
It is today. All right. And diluting our political power.
Yes.
You hear me? They already know that only 1 out of 5 charters outperform traditional public schools. They know this, despite the fact they can pick the kids they want, kick out the ones they don't.
Right.
They battle it. They batting 20%.
Yeah.
Now I'm in Texans and Cowboys territory, right? Texans. All right, my bad. All right now. No, okay. So if Deshaun Watson completed 5 out of 20 passes, would he keep his job?
Nope.
Would he?
Not.
If everybody on the Houston Astros batted 20% or 200, would they stay in the major leagues?
No.
But a method of school, I'm not going to say the word reform. A method of school interventions that is a $7 trillion industry around the world is being implemented in black and brown communities despite its failure.
Exactly.
Dr. Charles Payne from Rutgers University says that the charter movement does not deserve the word reform. They are mediocre interventions that are only accepted because of the race of the children served. Now, so by the data, and I humbly recommend that you all use this, right? By the data, we know the school privatization is not the issue. So, but it's resonating in many of our communities around the country because the traditional public school system has not done us right either.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Many of us made it through the public school system. We may have had some good teachers that watched out for us, but the system was still inequitable.
Yes.
So let's take a walk real quick. 1954, Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP get landmark litigation passed called Brown v. Board that says separate and equal is unconstitutional and must be stopped with all deliberate speed.
Yes.
Immediately after the passage of Brown v. Board, the school choice movement was born. White parents across the United States chose to pull their children out of the public school system because they did not want to send their children to school with black children. Senator Harry Byrd from Virginia called for massive resistance. This is a U.S. senator, right? This ain't somebody in, www.whitepower.com. This is a U.S. senator.
Exactly.
that says massive resistance to Brown v. Board, and other senators around the country join with him. Martin Luther King goes on the west side of Chicago in the Poor People's Campaign, talking about integrating schools and affordable housing. He goes to Gage Park, and the white people in Gage Park hit him in the head with a brick. So then, after the 60s, after the Civil Rights Movement, Ronald Reagan introduces zero tolerance. And then George Bush puts it in full effect. And so they label black and brown children as criminals. And then they begin to implement school discipline policies that fuel the school to prison pipeline. That was energized by Bill Clinton when he signed the crime bill in 1995.
You better talk.
Which allowed for $31 billion for the building of new prisons. They are still building prisons today off the crime bill.
It is history.
That's right. So then, the original vision of charter schools to be centers of innovation where public schools can learn from are mutating because privatizers and corporate interests see black communities across the country that have been decimated.
Yeah.
How many of you all remember a time? Now, I just went, when we were down by the turkey leg place.
Yeah.
I would go there,
Turkey
man.
leg
By the
hut.
turkey leg place.
We went to reggae.
We went to the reggae hut. So I saw this row of black businesses. But I'm willing to bet cash money that 80% of the businesses in the black community today are not owned by black people. Is that accurate? Is that accurate? Why do I know that? Because when I was a kid, that wasn't the case. How many African Americans here at least 45 years old? Raise your hand. Do you remember when we used to own the businesses in our community?
Yes.
I want my allies to hear. I want my allies to hear us. There was a time when I was a shorty, when I was a child. My wife says I use slang too much. I'm sorry. When I was a child, there was a black man that owned a gas station in my block.
Right.
A Clark gas station. The woman that owned the McDonald's on the corner was an African American woman. Nettie's ice cream nook, the barbershop. Our corner store wasn't no Arab ran liquor store. It was a white hand pantry owned by a black man, Mr. Robinson. And at some point, black business owners stopped getting support.
Yeah.
And then these conglomerates of Arab and Asian families began to buy up businesses in our communities.
But wasn't living.
And then that money does not flow through our neighborhood, it leaves our neighborhood
Exactly.
immediately. They say money's supposed to flow through your neighborhood 7 times before it leaves. Right? So, the school choice movement has never been about civil rights. But because we have not taken the mantle, the people, we have not taken the mantle, you have perpetrators like Arnie Duncan talking about education as a civil rights issue of our day. This is the same dude that said Hurricane Katrina was the best thing that ever happened in education in
See
New
what I'm
Orleans.
saying?
Right? So they perpetrators, right? They front. So the work has to be the people, us. We have to believe that we have the capacity and the right to determine how these institutions function in our community.
Yes.
So we know, let me say this real quick, the United Nations says that there are 5 basic institutions in the community: education, housing, food production and delivery, clothing, and healthcare.
Yes.
So what I want to ask us to do is think about how those institutions function in our communities today. They run those institutions based on how they see us, their opinions of us. So these institutions actually become vehicles to sabotage our growth and development.
Yes.
As opposed to institutions that are made in our image, where our children have culturally relevant curriculum,
Yes.
right? Where my son can learn about Marcus Garvey, not as the man who was the Back to Africa man, but the man who built an organization with 11 million people in 1915.
Yes.
Who could do that? Who bought the red, black, and green flag and said, "Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will." And was so dangerous that the government had to go get W.E.B. Du Bois and other people to set that brother up.
Yep.
And when W.E.B. Du Bois was on his deathbed writing his memoirs, he said Marcus Garvey was right. But we have a system that looks at us as if we are something wrong with us.
Right.
Then the little girls will never learn about Queen Nzinga, who fought the Portuguese for over 40 years and never lost a battle. They got statues in Angola to Queen Nzinga today. They'll never learn about Ethiopia, the only African nation that was never conquered. They'll never learn that the people that were in Egypt were burnt skin. They were black people building the pyramids. They won't learn that because the system is designed to make sure that we don't believe in us.
Yes.
So understand, I'm not Randy Raven, understand this. So why would we allow a system that views us like that to run our education institution? Why? So I'm going to show y'all a little video. All right? We're going to talk about what we've done and what we're doing now to fight, to wage the 21st century fight for education. And I want to ask, I humbly ask, that you all think about doing this in Houston. This has put privatizers on the defensive in many of our key cities across the country. So, Brother Ben, DJ Ben is getting the dust off his turntable. What we're gonna do, if y'all can turn the lights up for me, please. I just want to share with you a story. Walter Dyett was a labor leader and a music teacher, and they called him the Star Maker. He taught at Phillips High School in Chicago and at DuSable High School.
That we have not even approached equality, let alone equity in public.
And I'll finish this story after the video.
We do not have failures. As a public, we have been failed. We examined simple course offerings in 12 cities across the United States, and the results illuminate what we all know in our communities. America knows how to educate children, but refuses to educate the Black, the Brown, the Native American, and the poor.
In every pairing of high schools we looked at, majority white schools offered more, both in academic content and in the arts, than majority Black or Brown schools.
Inequity is key to the lack of investment around the country for kids who are poor and disproportionately Black and Brown.
This is simply looking at what some children have access and opportunity for and are succeeding, and what other children do not have.
The crime is that legislators and school administrators have allowed school systems to provide a quality education for some public school students, while allowing students of color and students with less financial means to languish in schools that have endured decades of disinvestment.
Today, as for most of our history, children of color and those living in poverty are disproportionately denied the most challenging and engaging educational experiences.
Please download a copy of the report, organize conversations around this inequity, and then join us in the fight to make sure that all our children have the opportunity to learn.
So what we did is we produced a report called Fiel and Brown v. Board, and we started with 12 cities. And what we wanted to say, in order to frame the question around equity, we said, let's look at course offerings, right? And so by doing that, we showed, and you said, why are course offerings important? Our definition of education is very simple. It's inspiration and information that prepare young people to take their place in the world. Education is not about the information you shove down a young person's throat. It's about that moment of self-discovery. It's about young people realizing what they can do, being inspired. Now, if you go to a school where there's no science lab, if you go to a school where there's a library but no librarian, if you go to a school where you don't get to learn a world language and connect it to your culture, right? Then what is happening is you are missing out on opportunities for inspiration. When I was coming up, I loved to write, and my inspiration was writing for the school newspaper, the Kenwood Kaleidoscope, and playing on the football team. And that kept me focused. It held me accountable to the classes that I hated, like chemistry and all the other stuff. But if I understand it, then correct. But if a child does not have that, that is what my brother Travis calls sabotage. Right. See, if children go to a school, see, President Obama, Arnie Duncan and Rahm Emanuel sent their children to the University of Chicago Lab School. At the University of Chicago Lab School, they say on their website that they have a one teacher for every 23 student maximum classroom ratio. Every teacher has a teacher aide. Art and music are core curricular subjects. Testing is used for assessment, not for punitive purposes. So my question to you, if that's good enough for their kids, how come it ain't good enough for ours? So what we decided to do was say, we're not gonna just sit back and ask them, please don't close our school. We're gonna go on the attack. You guilty, school board, because you got these savage inequities and you haven't even talked about it. You're punishing schools that you've started, right? And so, and understand this, we're not saying equality, we're talking about equity. Right. Equity is like healing the wound, right? Yes. Not, I don't want the same as my white counterparts. No, how do you heal the wound? How do you make up for decades of disinvestment, right? But so they're not even, so just think about Brown v. Board and just how bold, how gangster it is to not implement Brown v. Board and then go after the schools that you've been starving. Because the public narrative is that there's something wrong with our kids, right? You know? But Ice Cube has a song where he says, who's the monster that invented lower living, who is the monster that invented lower living, and who is the monster that invented these prisons, right? The point is, for some children, we invest, and for some children, we destroy. That's sabotage, right? And I'm asking y'all, if anybody, I want you to struggle with what I'm saying to you. It's easy. I want you to think of it. See, there's a belief system, sisters and brothers. A belief system can be called value. A value system is beliefs that govern your behavior. What you believe is what you do, right? We see, just saw the other day, you know, the little sister in McDonald's, and this white dude felt like he can just grab her and start hitting on her, right? We saw Michael Brown, 17-year-old boy, police officer about my side. Michael Brown ain't got nothing. What people aren't saying is that he shot this boy 5 times and the last shot was in the face. Yeah.
Yep.
But what they did to Mike Brown is they went on CNN and dirtied him up. Eric Garner was lynched on YouTube.
Yep.
This grandfather, this papa, was lynched on YouTube. And MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN dirtied him up. He was selling loose squares. So if he was selling loose squares, he supposed to die. He supposed to die. So to undervalue that belief system, what I'm saying to you, sisters and brothers, is there's a belief system that is never valued, that has actually hated us. And because there's never, and I'm saying this because I'm saying for my white sisters and brothers in the room, the time is now for you to become anti-racism warriors. Warriors. No, don't clap. I don't mean tolerant.
Right.
Because I don't need you to tolerate me. Warriors in your own communities to transform your folks' thinking. Because that hatred is the same hatred that murdered black servicemen when they came home from World War II. That hatred is the same hatred that made U.S. presidents refuse to sign the anti-lynching law. United States presidents refused to sign a law that would say mobs of people cannot string up black men, women, and children, cut off their body parts, and put it on their damn china cabinet. The reason I'm talking like this, because the war that's being waged on us is this serious, and it's that hatred that has never been transformed.
Yes.
So I'm not looking at my children and saying they're the problem. You got the wrong one if you think that's what we about. That's not what we're doing. So, and what I'm saying in this room is not personal against anybody. I'm saying it with love. If you want a better world, you ain't gonna win it. You can't sidestep this.
Exactly.
Black people, you can't sidestep this. You can't. Every shooter was once in 3rd grade.
Thank you.
Every shooter was once this big and anything was possible. And what happened? What happened? All right, we can say it starts at home. It don't. It starts in our communities. That's right. I learned how to be a man with the men in my community. I learned how to talk to girls with the men in my community. My daddy didn't teach me how to get no phone numbers. It was the men in my neighborhood that schooled me. My older cousin, Rodney. Y'all follow me?
Yeah.
That it starts in the home stuff is an old school way of looking at things. And if you think about it, if it's about every individual home, we'll never transform this world.
Thank you.
The value systems come from our communities. My father would go up to the tavern with Mr. Anderson and Mr. Harris and all them brothers. Them was his homies. That's who he vibed with. He helped develop perspective with. And if our communities are sabotaged, then our lives are sabotaged. Now, because I know time is moving, so I want to hurry up. So, what I would humbly suggest is that you do a course comparison in Houston. You figure out where's the affluent school that serves, white children, and where's a black school, and you make the school board answer to what we make them answer to. And now the CEO in Chicago talking about they started an office of equity. I'm like, no, baby, it's too late.
Okay.
You can start the office of equity, but the establishment cannot determine what the metrics of equity are. The people must determine. So, we have them shook. So what they're doing now is they're trying to address the issues that we're raising, and meanwhile, we're coming forth, not only in Chicago, but in several cities with our vision for what public education should look like. So, I'm gonna close in a second. I just want to share with you some victories. So we decided, how do we build a national campaign led by the people in local communities and things that you care about? So we was like, look, privatizers were brilliant coming up with the notion of school choice.
Yeah.
Because who wouldn't want to choose the schools they go to? But we know that in black and brown communities, there is no such thing as school choice. Because if you throw a grenade in my neighborhood school, do I have a choice?
Thank you.
If you throw a bomb in my neighborhood school, I'm grabbing my baby, I'm taking my baby wherever I can take it. If you sabotage my neighborhood school, there is no choice. So we said, well, here it is. We developed a campaign called We Choose Equity, the We Choose campaign. And we say we choose equity, not the illusion of school choice, or what we're saying now, school choice is a scam. I just want to share with you some of the things that we've done in this campaign. Let's go to the next slide. So this is Chicago, Illinois. That's Miss Irene Robinson. Oh, I just forgot something. Hold on. Ben, hold on. Put a pause on that for a second. I can tell y'all a quick story. Can I tell y'all a quick story?
Yes.
Y'all gotta forgive me, man. I've been all over the place. All right, so look. I'm not boring y'all, am I?
No.
We good? Okay, all right. So, this is kind of launched thing when I say we can win. I sat on the local school council. I was talking about Walter Diet and I got sidetracked. I apologize. I sat on the local school council with Diet for 10 years. Captain Diet was a teacher, a music teacher who actually taught. He taught Red Fox. He taught Nat King Cole. He taught Dinah Washington. He taught Eddie Harris for any jazz heads in the house, Gene Ammons. He taught thousands of professional musicians. He died in 1969. In 1972, Diet Middle School was erected on the south side of Chicago. It was a very popular middle school that taught vocational skills and things of that nature. Parents from all over the city brought their children to Diet. But in 1999, as they were trying to gentrify my neighborhood, they turned Martin Luther King High School into Martin Luther King College Prep. Now that means that the children that live right across the street from King could no longer go there. So with 3 months, sounds familiar, right? With 3 months notice, they turned Diet into a high school. So in 1999, Diet began accepting freshmen. When I joined the local school council in 2003, there were no honors classes and no AP classes. So we had to begin to petition the board to begin to get resources. That means the first graduating class from Diet never had access to an honors or AP class. In 2006, they closed a school called Inglewood, all right, where Derrick Rose went. In Derrick Rose's neighborhood. They closed Inglewood, and they dumped 125 kids in the Diet, and the school exploded. Because kids from different neighborhoods, violence exploded. We rolled our sleeves up. We started student mentorship programs, student leadership programs. We brought in restorative justice. We hired a new dynamic principal named Jacqueline Lemon. She had taught some of the kids in elementary school, so she had a handle on the school. The school began to improve. In 2008, we had the largest increase of students going to college in all of Chicago public schools, right? In 2008 and 2009, we had the largest decrease in arrests and suspensions. We had a nationally recognized restorative justice program. In 2011, we won the ESPN Rise Up Award. ESPN used to give $4 million grants to different schools that were doing great things but needed help. We ended up beating out like 600 schools around the country. And the next year, they voted to close our school. So that's the meeting while I was on some boo, right? Yeah. So, we felt it coming. So at that time, I was the education organizer for the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. So we began to meet with parents at the feeder schools and students to say, what is your vision for what your school should look like? And we used 6 metrics. And I can email you all this, you can get it, but it's called Sustainable Community Schools. So I began to meet with groups of parents and ask them these questions. What do you want to see around curriculum that is relevant, engaging, and challenging? What do you want to see in regards to supports for high quality teaching, not standardized testing? What type of wraparound supports do our children need? How do we build a student-centered school climate? How do we have transformative parent and community engagement? In other words, don't treat the parents like they stole something when they come up to the school. and engage the parents, find the wisdom that parents have and allow them to contribute to the school culture, and then inclusive school leadership. What does an inclusive school leader look like? Began to meet with parents and teachers around that. And we began to fight because they voted to phase the school out. It wasn't an immediate closure. So we began to organize the students. The students ended up filing Title VI civil rights complaints with the U.S. Department of Education because it got so bad that they had to take art and gym as online classes, right? Wow. But these students were highly organized. So they began to really go at me. So we decided that our target was Mayor Rahm Emanuel, because we don't have an elected school board. We have an appointed school board. The mayor runs the school board. And so we went at Mayor Rahm Emanuel and our local alderman. And we began to wage what they called the fight for diet. So we did everything. So first, we kept working. We built this plan. The American Education Research Association said it was the best academic plan they'd ever seen, because it was for Diet High School and 6 of its feeder schools. So I'm gonna throw a phrase out here to you all that I'm humbly asking y'all to think about. It ain't about saving individual schools. What we have to do is we have to start demanding pre-K through 12 systems of education in our neighborhoods. Pre-K through 12 systems of education. So as we're developing this plan, and the plan is getting more publicity, the young people are getting ready to close the school because we down to like the junior and senior class. So we begin to go hard at Rahm Emanuel. So 15 of us chained ourselves to a statue outside of his office. We stayed there for 2 days, right? Got all types of news coverage. We went to his house. We sent 700 people to his house. When he popped up somewhere, he did a press conference in front of an elementary school called Mollison. We came up there with 50 students and some parents, and we busted up his press conference.
Yes.
And we unfurled a huge Save Diet sign across the press conference. It was all over Fox and everything else. He showed up at Bret Harte Elementary School. We showed up at Bret Harte Elementary School. And so what happened is we began to intensify the fight. They said, okay, we're gonna reopen it, but we're gonna reopen it as a charter. We're like, no, sir. No, you're not. So now remember, this is like a 4-year fight. The school is closing. It would have been easy to give up hope. But what made people commit was that we actually went to parents and we asked them, what do you think? And we meant it. Who comes to us and asks us, what do you think should be happening in the schools? And they do it with a measure of seriousness and a measure of sincerity. Y'all follow my point?
Yes.
So as we met with students and parents, there was a fight back because the people wanted what they developed. And they saw, as we were chipping away, they saw the rocks begin to fall off the mountain. And they knew that we can win. So he said, okay, it's gonna be a public school. He came up with an RFP process. All these bootleg people came with plans for the school. Our plan was by far the best. He said, whichever plan is the best is going to be who gets the school. We wanted a neighborhood school that would be global leadership in green technology with a strong art focus. But because it was us, and because we represent our base is working in low-income black families, they don't want to give us infrastructure to stay in the neighborhood. Y'all follow me? A pre-K through 12 system of education is infrastructure, right? I didn't tell y'all this. What was really behind the closing of Diet? That was where they wanted to put the Obama Presidential Center. Yeah, see? So, and if you know anything about developments like that, that would be a piece where they would actually, that would put gentrification on steroids. Because they're not building a chicken shack next to the Obama Presidential Center. They're not building a check cashing place. They're going to build housing and boutique shops for an international tourist destination. And so that's what we were up against. When they reneged on the plan, August 17th, 2015, me and 11 other parents waged what was known as the hunger strike for Diet High School. Now, you're probably looking at me like you ain't been on no hunger strike. I was on a hunger strike. Yes, I was. And I'm laughing about it, but it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. Because this sister, if you go to the first slide on here, go back. Right. Yeah. The sister right there on the mic is Irene Robinson. She's one of the hunger strikers. Irene Robinson was hospitalized 3 times. You know, it was traumatic. It was traumatic. It was hard because we realize that in order for our voices to be heard, what district in their right mind would not work with activated parents who wanted to improve their school?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't the district work with us? But they didn't care because it wasn't about education. And it ain't about education. Nowhere. It's about money and it's about removing us from urban spaces.
Yes.
Right? So what I want to share with you is after 34 days we won. And Diet High School was reopened as an open enrollment neighborhood high school with $16 million in new investments. And today, 98% of the freshmen are on track to graduate. And that's today. Yeah. So my work as the organizer was not to be the one talking. My work was to build the strength of the group so that we would be willing to take those type of measures. You follow me? These were not activists, these were mamas that were at the feeder schools. You feeling me? And so how the level of trust that I had to build in them, it took time. But we developed, like you all have, because I'm gonna say this, I'm blown away because you all are grassroots education experts. You know your stuff. They can't run no game on you. You running this meeting, you have translators, you have people, you have documentation, you have the all I'm saying is you all are already organized. You already organized. What we have to do as we wage this fight is we got to raise our expectations of each other and realize these people, the privatization movement is losing around the country, which is why now they've got a second influx of hundreds of millions of dollars that they're pumping into it because they're panicking, because they're losing. And I'll show you where they're losing at. All right, let's go. So what we did is we organized town halls in cities across the United States. We choose town halls in 34 different cities. Chicago, those are students marching to Mayor Rahm Emanuel's house, 400 of us in the rain, around the closing of Inglewood schools. That's us doing an action in front of Chase Bank. In Chicago, our big push right now is for an elected representative school board. All right?
We deserve that.
This is us in New Orleans. Now, they just voted to turn the last school in New Orleans charter. But here's what folks in New Orleans are doing that's powerful. They are instituting charter school accountability measures, making sure that they cannot kick kids out and keep the money. Making sure that children that live within walking distance of that school can go. And they just passed a state law that said that ESSA money, the elementaries, the Every Student Succeeds Act money from the feds can be used for community schools. So now other cities in Louisiana, like Shreveport, like Baton Rouge, are actually opening community schools as an alternative to school privatization. So what they want to do is stop the growth of the plague, right? And then begin to institute their vision of sustainable community schools. All right, let's keep moving. We have folks in Prince George's County, Maryland, that are organizing for sustainable community schools and to stop the suspension of kindergarten through third graders. This is one of the town hall meetings we did there. Pittsburgh, they're kicking butt in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, they used the We Choose campaign to elect a progressive school board. And the first thing they did is they kicked Teach for America out of Pittsburgh. And then that's the We Choose community. That's the candidates forum that I was the moderator of. And they also just passed a bill outlawing the suspension of kindergarten. Now that is crazy that you should even have to do this.
Yeah.
But outlawing the suspension of kindergarten through second grade. Right? So, and they stopped 9 school closings and they've opened 11 community schools in Pittsburgh. All right, let's move. All right. Newark, New Jersey, Brick City, our group there, Pulse. What they did in Pulse is they began the expansion of their goal is for Newark to become a sustainable community school district, right? The mayor, Raj Baraka, supports that initiative. But what they did is they filed Title VI civil rights complaints in Newark saying that school closings harm black children, and they won. So the district had to then implement reforms, and that's how they opened the space for community schools. But something that heavy just happened in New Jersey. See, what they did and what they're trying to do here in Houston is the state takeover stuff, right? That's what they did in New Jersey. They invented an education crisis, and they took over the power from all the black cities. Camden, Newark, Patterson, Jersey City, all right? All the other cities got to have the right to elect their school board. What they just did in the November elections is they had a referendum saying that they wanted their rights back to get their school board, and they won. So in Newark, in Camden, in Patterson, they won back the right to elect their school board, right? These are folks in Detroit. And so we actually went to Cincinnati to learn about community schools. If you want to go somewhere and learn about effective community schools, 2 places: Tulsa, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, and believe it or not, Dallas. Dallas has some great community schools, all right? So what we're doing in Michigan, they formed a statewide coalition. This is another thing that's happening around the country. In small black suburbs, they're eliminating the school districts. So there are 2 cities in Michigan, Albion, Michigan, and Inkster, Michigan. And what they did, they annexed both of their school districts. So their children are being bused into other districts, not wealthy districts, other struggling districts. So what they've done is they got the mayor of Albion on board, they've got a base, they got a powerful coalition, and the governor of Michigan is committing to reopen, to bring the schools back to those 2 cities. And they actually stopped 39 school closures in Detroit. The governor was trying to close 39 schools in Detroit, and they were able to stop that. Let's see movement. We have a social media, our social media game is pretty tight. We have a communications committee where we've trended on Twitter about 24 times. We've trended #1 maybe 5 or 6 times, I'm not sure. But that has been helpful in spreading our word out, targeting elected officials, and things of that nature, all right? We are winning support from state elected officials. This is Michigan, this is the state senator that developed the bill for the schools to go back to Albion and Inkster. We won the support of the NAACP. Now you probably NAACP. NAACP National has called for a moratorium on charter school expansion. That came because, and if you look at their charter, they say because of the Journey for Justice report, Death by 1,000 Cuts, we are calling for a moratorium on charter school expansion. So we're proud to have been part of the inspiration for that to happen. So what we're doing in our next phase is we're going to be doing equity forums in partnership with the NAACP around the country, exposing the inequity in public education and making elected employees face that inequity, right? And then we actually have a research and policy committee where we have bills, we have equity mandate bills, where if you all want to look at Houston and say, how do we demand equity? We actually have bills that you can move. You can take it, you can shape it however you want to shape it, right? All right, we did National Town Hall, all right? We did town hall meetings in Tucson. I've been all over the place, man. Tucson, Dayton, Ohio. Dignity in Schools Coalition. So we are a national, many of the national networks around the country have joined the We Choose campaign. Because what we were seeing was a lot of us believe in the same thing. One group may be working on zero tolerance, another group may be working on testing, another group may be working on stopping school closings, but we weren't working together. But we fighting the same dragon, right? So our work was to bring all those people together. And what did it was the original fight back against Betsy DeVos's nomination. We made over 1 million phone calls, we flipped 2 Republicans, and then we took 2 busloads of parents from Detroit to the Senate confirmation hearing and turned that out. So that was how the We Choose campaign got jumped off. In New York, I don't know if y'all heard about this, but in order for de Blasio to be elected mayor, one of our member groups called the Alliance for Quality Education launched a campaign that demanded that the new mayor commit to 100 community schools and no school closings. De Blasio was the only one to commit. He went from last place to first place. And that's how he won. And they're actually establishing those community schools. All right? So let's keep moving. There's young people turning it out of Chicago public schools. There's young, oh, go back one. Now, this is Camden, New Jersey, one of the most depressed cities in the United States. There's a powerful group of young people called the Camden Students Union. Their teacher is a brother named Jamal Dickinson, award-winning music teacher. that holds the young people to high standards, deals a lot with culturally relevant stuff. The district hates him. A student complained because he made the boy pull his pants up. The district jumped all over that and they suspended him. The students occupied their band room until the brother was reinstated.
Yes.
And to this point, that number has jumped. There's over 2 million people that have supported the We Choose campaign. We believe that the way forward is a 21st century fight for education equity. Not determined by me, determined by what you all know in Houston. Because at the end of the day, that's what all of this is about. It's a different set of rules for our kids than other kids. And we cannot keep accepting that as normal. Like that's just how it is. No, that's just how we've let it be, right? So what we are doing now is we're building momentum for a new Brown v. Board campaign, a new campaign for education equity. And our next step, so on January 24th, we have a congressional briefing in Washington, D.C. with U.S. Representative Bobby Scott, who's now the chair of the Education Committee, all right? And it's focused on inequity. So it's focused on the Brown v. Board report and how much money they steal from us through Title I and IDEA, all right? Now, after that, we're going to be launching these equity forums in cities across the country. We'd love for y'all to do one here. And then in June, we're going to release a national report that looks at the course comparisons in at least 30 cities. And then we're calling for Bobby Scott to hold a a U.S. congressional hearing, not a briefing, a hearing where Betsy DeVos gets subpoenaed.
Yes.
And has the answer to us, right?
Yes.
Now, I ain't up here trying to sell nothing to you. I'm just letting you know this is what our plans are, and this is how we're trying to move forward. What I'm excited about is that what I love about the Journey for Justice Alliance, when we sit in a circle, is a seasoned organizers that kick butt. So when we're talking to each other like people that want to build power, because that's what this is about. Somebody else right now has the power over how education institutions function in Houston. And what we have to realize in Chicago, Detroit, wherever we at, is that we are worthy of being in control of how these institutions
Yes.
function. I was named after a brother named Jitu out of Brooklyn, New York, to show you how it's the same issue. Jitu became an ancestor about 5 years ago. But Jitu led the community control of schools movement in Brooklyn. And it was the same issue. It was low expectations for black kids, it was racist, and they went after it, and they won. And that's who I was named after. So all I'm saying to you is that the issue ain't changed. The issue, we cannot take our eye off the prize. School choice is a scam, it's a hustle. So if there are any charter school proponents in here, I'm not trying to make an enemy out of any charter school parents. We have to send our babies wherever we have to send them.
Right.
And what the privatizers would love to do is pit charter school parents versus public school parents. It's not about that.
Right.
It's not about that. If your child goes to a charter school, you should ask yourself these questions. Why do they have a governing board of 15 people and only 2 of them are parents? So if they really value your input, how come you don't have decision-making authority? And you should demand decision-making authority. You should demand more parents on those governing boards. You should demand that they cannot just kick children out because they have special needs or the English language learners. You should demand it. Because sisters and brothers, that's not education, that's hustling.
Thank you.
That's hustling. Because what they want to do is at the end of the day, they want to go to the school board and they want to say, look, and then what do they get? More schools.
More, yes.
So I'm gonna get off this stage. I know we got questions. I hope we got time for questions. But I want to say this last thing. There's a school in Chicago called Urban Prep. Urban Prep is nationally known because they say 100% of the brothers go to college. They graduate. The brother that runs Urban Prep is named Tim King. I know Tim King well. What Tim King wasn't telling people was that only 41% of the freshmen made it to their senior year.
Right.
So his school, in essence, is a scam because it's a meat grind. They kick out the kids that they have to struggle to educate, and then at the end of the year they look better, but they haven't prepared these brothers to matriculate through college. So that whenever you see these highly successful charter schools, you have to ask yourself these questions. Success Charter School in New York has some of the highest, even Moskowitz, has some of the highest push-out rates ever recorded. That's not education. We didn't go through education like that. So, as Public Enemy said back in the day, don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. I'm gonna put this out here. I would be honored if this coalition would consider becoming members of the We Choose campaign and joining the Journey for Justice Alliance. Advertisers don't want us to believe we can win. They don't. So what I'm telling you, all I'm telling you is that I'm the representative of an organization where people are kicking butt and they win. Now we take some loss. It's a fight. We win some and we lose some, but people are organizing. And the more of us that we have that are stronger locally, the stronger we are nationally. Because the time is going to come when Washington, D.C. going to have to get shut down. The time is coming. I ain't talking about going there doing a march on Washington and leaving town at 6 o'clock.
Right.
I'm talking about like going to the U.S. Department of Education and not leaving until we get some justice. That's coming. And we have to build permanent infrastructures where we organize to control the institutions in our community. This fight may have launched it, but it's got to be long term. Because until we transform the belief system, there will always be a war being waged against us. And together, we can do it. But we can't run from racial justice. Thank you very much.
I told y'all. Mr. Brown, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, you know, I was raised to respect that knowledge that you're throwing out at us. So guys, wow, I mean, look around the room, look at yourselves. Look at this turnout. We can win this. We are here and we can win this, and this is amazing. We've got, at this point, you probably have questions. I hope you have questions. We want you to ask questions, so we're going to open it up. We've got a volunteer. Where's that volunteer? Amelie's the volunteer. Y'all remember Amelie? Yeah, we spent some time behind bars together because children deserve our biggest fight, our hardest fight. If you have questions, Amelie, where do you want them? Do you want them to come to the side?
Right down here.
Yeah, just come over to the side, line up on the side. Please remember, there is absolutely no question that should not be asked. Oh wait, I'm sorry, it's over here. So there's no question that should not be asked, can't be asked. And the reality is we don't have all the answers, but you know what? We will certainly find the answers for you because we're organizers and that's what we do. So we're going to start with Q&A.
Hey, my name is Lloyd Ford. I'm a leader of a local group called Creative Group Economics, and I heard you mention the NAACP. And my question is to you is how do we locally bring our local NAACP branches to the same mission as the national branch. I know we have a local president that sits on the board of private schools and have the interest of privatizing our schools in those manners. How do we bring that as a full forward we brand? We have litigation against the NAACP Houston and National of bringing these full sword and making sure we hold them accountable of the things that they're doing. How do we bring that mission down? Because we are available and ready for the mission to bring forth and make sure we hold our organizations that's on the leaders of that fight, hold them accountable and make that happen.
Yes, sir. So can you all hear me? Well,
Y'all can hear okay?
No.
Oh, yeah, let's
Travis, you want to get that, brother? Sorry. Oh, no. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I would just say this. One, that's a huge issue because you have some NAACP locals that are good, then you have a lot that are not, right? And then there's a big push from places like California, Mississippi to get the NAACP right. So there's also an issue in Detroit. And I'm gonna tell you what they're doing in Detroit. In Detroit, they're waging their We Choose campaign, NAACP or not. And so now the NAACP is pressured, how come you're not with this when all these other groups are? And they're also organizing the students in the NAACP. So the students in the NAACP are pressuring the loan around their positions. So I would recommend a strategy like that. And then a last thing is to also, contact Derek Johnson from Derek Johnson from NAACP, the national president, and let him know that local is not working well, and we're moving for equity, and they're moving for privatization. And then from the top, they'll apply some pressure. But I think working with the students is around their lived experience is a way for students to begin to pressure from the inside. And then I think as you all move your campaign and you get momentum, that'll be pressure from two different areas that could possibly move them. Ain't no guarantee though, brother. Ain't no guarantee. That's my thought.
I'd like to also add that we are talking about speaking truth to power. So whatever that power looks like, we have to engage that power with the exact same energy all the time across the board. We look for strength in numbers. There are people that are organizing around education in different ways. Let's organize together. I feel you on our local chapter 100%, and we will work with you to speak truth to power, to put pressure where it belongs. The NAACP is supposed to work for us. And if we find in this community with any Black legacy org that they're not working for us, we need to start asking those organizations why. Ask them very clear questions. Why are you not working for us? Why are you trying to privatize schools? Ask them hard questions like, what is it in it for you? Because it's nothing in it for me. And the NAACP is supposed to be in this for me. I'm the colored person, So let's organize, let's combine, and let's organize together, and then we will hopefully get the results that we want. But best believe we see you, and yeah, let's do this. No, ma'am, not right now. Thank you. So, anybody else? Yeah. So if you have comments or questions, yeah, we can do just like that.
I have a few questions, but I'm gonna focus on this one. Why can't HISD parents and Houston citizens call for an emergency HISD Board of Trustee election, and we remove the Board of Trustees and we put people in that we want, and then we can go back and, confront the state by telling them we already did the job, so move out the way.
Yeah. That's a great question.
I have to answer some of that. I need the microphone now. The answer is we don't have recalls. We don't. A school board trustee is one of the safest elected officials in Texas. So that's something that people are starting to talk about, and I think that we need to talk about with our legislators. School board trustees in Texas are not paid, and they are in Houston, at least, in term for 4 years. So if we're not happy with them, it's quite a long time until we can say that again at the ballot box. So I think that's something that we need to petition our legislature for. We want a more responsive school board, not less. We don't want to outsource it and have it be privately appointed, whether it's a charter school or a state takeover. We want more democracy. We want it to be more responsive to us. And so in my opinion, I think recalls and I think paying them is important. Our city council is paid. It's a full-time job to run a school district. It's the 7th largest district in the country. We need those people working full-time on these issues. And we need people from the communities that they serve to be able to run. Right now, you can only run if you're rich or retired or something like that. So you have some source of money somewhere else. You can't serve if you're an everyday person. And so those are some of the. I think those two go together. We need to pay them and have recalls, but that's something the state has to do. Is the long answer, the short, the long answer.
We have to stop the musical chairs also. Meaning, if they was on city council, didn't do nothing. Don't vote for them. If they was a state rep, didn't do nothing. We got to stop the musical chairs. If you look at, if you just been watching the news, all the recycled elected officials are speaking up with this charter thing.
Absolutely.
It's money, 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 money. That's why I say stop allowing them to be comfortable when they're making us uncomfortable, right? It's good that we in here on the Saturday afternoon, but we shouldn't have to be in here discussing charter schools and school closures and unaffected elected employees. So at the end of it, we got to stop because if some of these, the same people, if you notice when people running for office, they talk about everything. But once they get elected, they say, I got to stay in my lane. But before that, they promised they was going to walk on water. So when you see them, you should make sure they walk on water and not get wet.
Okay, well, I actually have a question because that was brought up to me by Bert. Where can we get more information? We want to know more.
So more information, follow HISD Parent Advocates. We push out a lot of important information through that page. You can also follow Black Lives Matter Houston. We'll push out information that way. You can also contact us. You can email us, message us if you have very specific questions. And we will definitely get back to you. We'll share resources with you, whatever we need to do to meet your needs. So that is one of the easiest ways to get the information that you need. You can also go to, if you really want to just know what the school board responsibilities are and all of that, go to the TEA websites, read what they're supposed to do, and then take a look. Is this what's happening in my community? You know, but as far as our next steps, that's probably the best way to stay in tune to what's happening.
Real short, it's a sacrifice, but start coming to some of these school board meetings.
Absolutely.
It's a big sacrifice, and we should dictate how they run the school board meetings, right? We shouldn't have to sit there for 2 hours with them talking about absolutely nothing. You understand what I'm saying? They will keep you there, but the reason they do that, they want us to become impatient and leave.
Right.
April the 24th, we was there from 4 p.m. to after midnight. They kept us waiting. They kept us waiting for over 2 hours. So we got a piece of it. And we sat right there, right? So at the end of the day, it has to be some accountability, right? A title is only as good as the person that's wearing that title, right? But stop being, I mean, if they're gonna treat us a certain kind of way, like, have you noticed, we didn't ask anyone to write their question down on index cards. But when they have their meetings, they get to dictate what you're gonna say at their meetings. And then each and every time an elected official walks through the door, they got to make an announcement. So at the end of the day, it's your tax dollars, it should be ran the way that you want it to run.
So, I'm sorry, and I'm going to say this right now, and I don't mean any disrespect whatsoever. If you are in this room and you're an elected employee, this is not your time to speak. This is your time to listen. So, with all respect, if you are in this room and you have been elected to do a job, Your job is to listen to your community, and we thank you and appreciate that. This is not your time to speak. Next question.
My apologies, but I do have 2 roles.
Okay, are you an elected employee?
I'm not here to do a campaign speech.
Okay,
I'm here
wait,
to.
so this is a
ask a
prime
question.
example of how elected employees push on our community. We have already made it very, I'm gonna stand up on this because we need to make sure that we understand where the power in this community is. I am a private citizen, and so are you.
And so
We
am I.
worked very hard to organize this for you. And I made it very clear, if you hold an elected office, this is not time for you to speak. And look at the pushback. We do not have to tolerate this. When we go to meetings, we follow their rules. We play by their rules. Oh, so I only get 1 minute to speak? Okay, well, I'm gonna hold it to 1 minute. I gotta write my questions down on a card. I'm gonna write my questions down on a card. I have to stop talking in the middle of my 1 minute because an elected employee walks in, I stop talking. We play by their rules. Today, this is our house and our space, and elected employees will play by our rules. This is how we win. And I'm going to leave you with all due respect. I respect you. I respect you more than I respect elected employees because they work for us. So I will thank you for handing that mic back.
With all due respect, you
challenge. No, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, put it on a card. You have a card? Have a seat, please, ma'am. You're taking up valuable time from the constituents you're supposed to serve.
So the next question that I have is, what is the plan, like what is our plan of action to get HISD to file the lawsuit or join the current lawsuit with the HISD parent advocates? Like what's the plan for us to do to push them and force them to do that?
Good question.
Well, the first thing is that you can show up on Thursday. Next Thursday, January 10th, is the next time the board meets. So you can show up and tell them. The more we have seen time and time again, we saw last April, we saw in December, when we show up, they listen. They are elected, elected employees accountable to us. So I think that's the first thing. You can show up on Thursday. It's going to be step by step because we don't know what moves they're going to pull. So show up Thursday is the next time we know they meet, and to show up and be loud and say that is the first step.
I think we can remind them that the mayor of City of Houston, who also tried to hop in the charter school business, he didn't have no problem suing us.
Right.
Or trying to sue us, or dragging us in court. Like I said earlier, he wasn't suing the firefighters, he was suing you all with your tax dollars. So at the end of the day, there has already been actions by parents in this room with the lawsuit. All HISD have to do, because it has already started, the state of Texas tried to get it kicked out. The judge said, no, we want to hear this. All HISD has to do is pick the suit up.
Exactly.
It has already started. All they have to do is pick it up. If HISD, the largest school district in the state of Texas, put their name where they should be, the smaller districts will fall in line. Plain and simple. But we all have to get on the same page and keep saying the same. Like I said, your elected official is supposed to represent your best interests, not their hidden agendas. So if you want a lawsuit, they should be considered a lawsuit.
Say it again.
The school board meeting is on the 17th.
Okay. Well, yes, it's on the 17th. It's a sacrifice to get there, but it's worth it.
What time?
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
It's supposed to start at 5 p.m.
Next question.
Good evening, how are you all today?
Good.
My name is McCullough. I am a resident of Fiel Ward. But I have a question nationally for you to address.
Yes, ma'am.
As I do my research and as I look at investors, privatizations, and people who have the means applying for charter schools, there are a lot of people applying for charter schools. In Texas, there's a company that nobody knows about that I found out just recently that applied for 4 charter schools in Texas, and one of them will be opening in the Sunnyside area in August. Then there's another one that's being planned to open on the near north side. And these are these large companies that we're not aware of unless you kind of follow the charter school movement, privatization, to see how they maneuver in with that school choice, because all that's a bunch of crap moving together. So my question is this the model that we need to be aware of and look for? Because it's amazing when you have a conversation with a person and you're talking about education, and all of a sudden they say, well, you know, I just got commissioned to open a school. What do you mean commission? Right. And the state of Texas is not commissioned. You have to apply for a charter. Oh, well, that's right, I did apply. Well, who are you representing? Who are you with? And then you hear all these companies, and I mean, it's just like, it's mind-blowing. So how do you keep up with it? Is there a tracking mode? Is this the model? I mean, just what's going on? Because all of this, to me, actually impacts what's happening at Weekly Cashmere in our schools forward. Because those schools are opening in our communities. So I just need a little bit more information so I don't have to do all that research and kind of figure it out and stay up and pray all night.
So I think that what you're raising is important. She's basically talking about how school management organizations or they actually organize to begin to swoop in and take like buildings where schools are closed, churches. In some cities, we got storefront schools, right? Storefront charter schools. So you have small school management companies, and then you have the industries, right? Now, you have some places where communities have legitimately said, we want to focus on robotics, so we want to open a small charter school. I don't have no problem with that. But those schools have been swallowed by the KIPS, by the rocket ships, and by the charter industries. These giant companies that actually, in many places, have schools across several different states. So what I would recommend is there's an organization called the Network for Public Education, NPE. I sit on their board, and we have a thing that we do called Another Charter School Scandal. And every week, we're just putting out the dirt on the charter movement. But if you go to NPE's website, a lot of the information, like what is the Eli Broad Institute? That's where they prepare their superintendents, their privatization superintendents. So, learning the history of Teach for America. See, the privatization movement has mad infrastructure. They have the foundations that fund them, and the biggest funder of charter schools is the federal government. Right. But then you also have people like the Walton Foundation, the Gates Foundation, the Joyce Foundation. So they have their fundraising infrastructure. They have the infrastructure to develop their fake school superintendents, the Eli Broad Institute. And then they even have their new principal preparation infrastructure. And some places it's called New Leaders for New Schools.
That's it. That's the person I was talking to.
There you go. So, New Leaders for New Schools. So that's where they develop their fake principals. I hope y'all. Then they have where they develop their fake teachers, Teach for America. Then they even have their fake community groups. Yep. So they come up with their groups.
Yes, indeed.
Whatever they call it Democrats for Education Reform, Parent Revolution. They even have fake youth groups. So they develop these AstroTurf groups, and they have that infrastructure, and then we end up like throwing rocks at tanks because we don't have the infrastructure. Right. So that's why I was sharing with you all about the research committee and stuff like that, because we're trying to build infrastructure so that we can wage battle, right? Right. So I hope that's helpful, man.
Thank you very much.
Network for Public Education.
Ma'am, real quick, Who is your state rep?
Why do I need to give you?
No, I'm just curious. I'm
just curious. Harry Dutton is my state rep.
Where you ask the question.
I told y'all from Fifth Ward.
Right.
You know Fifth Ward.
No. I'm just asking you.
All right.
Excuse me.
Hold up. You made me lose the information I didn't want.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not.
Well, I'm asking people in attendance. Who is the state rep for this area? Okay. Harold Dutton.
I'm not digressing.
And
It's called what?
the charters are filed in Austin. So somebody is very aware of what's coming to their district, to his or her district. So all I was trying to do is just inform you that people are aware of what's going on in their area.
But it's not only,
if you're right,
it's not only him.
No.
I need to respond to that. Hold up, let me respond to that, please. And I'm gonna sit down and you can say whatever you want to say. He's not the only state representative.
I never said he was.
There are other state representatives.
Well,
all of them know.
Thank you. Hold up. Excuse me. Ma'am, everybody at this meeting thus far, I think have been very respectful. Now, he is the only one that authored House Bill 1842.
Yes, he is.
Now, the rest of them voted on it, so all of them screwed us. But he did author the bill 1842 when this particular district has the most school closures in the Houston Independent School District. And if you look at his bill, everything in it caters to charter schools. So that's our problem. Sometimes we become naive and cater to these heroes, these so-called heroes out here. But they are the ones that's doing this to us.
And he's still defending.
And some of us are still defending. I was at, matter of fact, all 4 schools on the list is in District 2. All 4 of them is in District 2. Every last one of them. I was at the weekly meeting. I also said that they'll have to pry wheat out of his dead hands. Well, it's coming close to it.
Yeah.
I don't know which one's going to come first. But we better wake up. Not just him. Sylvester Turner voted for it also.
Absolutely.
See, we got to stop giving these passes. We got to, if 1842 was not on the table, we wouldn't be in this predicament. The first thing Orlando Sanchez said the other day, the treasurer who has never said anything about public education in his life,
That's right.
the bill authored by Harold Dutton allows us to.
Exactly.
So these are self-inflicted gun wounds. And we got to call it what it is. So if you want to defend your state rep while he's destroying your school, ma'am, that's on you. If he was here, I'd say the same thing. I've said it to him before. When he came to Sunnyside, trying to take over me, I told him the same exact thing I'm saying right here today. If you want to call him on your phone right now, I'll tell it to him.
So, sweetheart, yes, it's your turn, sis. It's your turn, young lady.